Hey, I wanted to respond to Biden's State of the Union speech. At least I watched about 40 minutes of it, and then I just couldn't really stomach anymore. Um, I was half interested to see if he'd say anything about us bad freedom people that he hates. Um, you know, but I actually wasn't that interested. I think if he said anything critical, I'll hear about it later. But I will go through the first 40 minutes and give you my take. You're welcome. So, I was watching on ABC. They mentioned before that there's no masks in this building, so I guess the pandemic's over. Just like that. They said we're following the science. They said everyone's been tested. So apparently testing works, but not masks. Apparently that's what the science is saying at this time. They warned us that he was going to mention the word inflation. Apparently that was a point of significance that they wanted to highlight. They said it had the feel of a wartime speech. So then Biden starts talking. He says, the commentators, when they said that, they said there's a massacre going on. So I guess they're painting the picture that Russia's completely invaded and they're fighting. To be honest, I have no idea what's going on there, and I don't really give a shit. Doesn't make much difference in my fucking life. I know, people are gonna blame each other, and it doesn't really fucking make a shit bit of difference. Philippines to me, I don't fucking care. So Biden started with a couple catch lines. He said, "Freedom will always triumph over tyranny." I agree with that statement. I believe freedom is inevitable, as I have discussed. He said Putin met a wall he couldn't imagine, the Ukrainian people. He said citizens are blocking tanks with their bodies. Then he said light will triumph over darkness. I hope he's right about that. I do believe that God is good, and I do believe that light will triumph over darkness, although I don't know who will be standing here in the light when that happens. Then he said, we stand with the Ukrainians. He said, when dictators don't pay a price, bad things happen or something. Okay. I mean, look, you're right that, when people are authoritarians, when people are using government violence to try to control other people, those other people often don't like that, and they frequently do pay a price for inciting those people. I can agree with that. Then he said, we are united. So I think he's talking about the two sides of Congress. The Republicans and Democrats are united in standing with the Ukrainians. Now, I suspect there are holdouts, but I, again, don't know, don't care. But I can tell you we are not united. I can tell you that we are disconnected from each other. Furthermore, I can tell you that disconnection is a result of the decisions you have made. So we're not united, and we're not united because you've chosen not to be united with us. Then he said, we countered Russia's lie with the truth. Again, I don't know what the truth is. I don't really care. Doesn't fucking make a shit bit of difference to me, dude. Putin is now more isolated than ever, he says. Well, I agree. Just like I am. just like everyone else who disagrees with you in any way or has any kind of conflict with you is. Because we're not united, we're divided. And we're divided because your strategy for life is to isolate yourself from anyone who makes you in the least bit uncomfortable. Then he talked about attacking them financially, all these banks, the drop in their currency, going after these oligarchs, taking their yachts away, all this kind of stuff. I don't know why you want to further incite a nation that has the power to blow you off the fucking map. But probably not real intelligent in the grand scheme of things. IMO. You know, he said later, well, we're not going to go into Ukraine. We're not sending troops in there, but we will defend our allies if he moves forward from here. So what he said is, okay, this is the line. I've drawn the line. We're not going into Ukraine, but we're holding our ground here. So if that's the case, why do you need to put sanctions on them? What the fuck are you even attempting to accomplish other than inciting a guy who has the ability to blow you to fucking smithereens? And your whole fucking Congress, and your whole fucking city, and your whole nation, and your whole family, and everyone else you give a fuck about in this fucking world. Just wondering, you know? He says we're cutting off flights. So, you know, again, all these sanctions, all these trade restrictions, he's basically asking the American people to sacrifice. When you lose trading partners, when you lose the ability to communicate, to trade with people in another country, it hurts both sides of that trade who would have stood to benefit from making that trade. So you're sacrificing your own people because you hate this guy so much you just want to make them suffer because he embarrassed you. Because he embarrassed you by going and just doing what you thought he was too afraid to actually fucking do, which is go in there in response to your previous sanctions. So this is a self-destructive pattern that is common in this world, and it'll come to a head when it comes to the head, and the price to pay will be the price to pay, and we will see what that is for those who are committing those actions and for those of us who are innocent and who suffer due to their unwillingness to be decent human beings. Let's see. So I said he moves forward. I don't know what that meant. He said he's depleting the strategic petroleum reserve. So, you know, one of our national assets is this bunch of oil we have stored. He says he's going to dump that oil on the market to try to counter the inflation in oil prices. Well, sure, if you increase supply, you temporarily decrease price, at least until you run out of supply, and then you just don't have that asset anymore, and then prices just go to where they were going to go to anyway, and you've created an even greater dependency on oil that you simply can't afford anymore, because your economy is destroyed from decades of bad decisions that have been made over and over, and have been papered over with a credit bubble that will collapse, and may collapse very shortly. He said this will result in so he says our actions will result in a weaker Russia and a stronger world, and he's wrong. This isn't a zero-sum game where their loss is our gain. This is a negative-sum game where their loss is our loss, because when you lose that trading partner, you both fucking lose. When you choose to disconnect from someone, both parties lose. When you choose not to trade with someone, both parties lose. When you choose to participate in a boycott, you're making a sacrifice and you're hurting yourself. So it won't result in a stronger world, it will result in a weaker world for everyone. And what are you gaining from this, other than inspiring hatred and potentially catastrophic violence? I'd really like an answer to that question if any Biden supporters happen to be watching this. You know? Then he said we've lived through 2 of the toughest years this nation has faced. No, we fucking haven't. We haven't lived through shit. We're a bunch of spoiled fucking children living off a credit bubble that's going to collapse. After it collapses, then you can talk about 2 tough fucking years. What arrogance to even make a statement like that after the fucking hell that people went through building this fucking country. Building the fucking railroads, building the fucking mines, the coal mines, the fucking child labor, all the shit, the slavery people fucking faced, the wars they faced, the Great Depression. I mean, you fucking name it, and you tell me this is the 2 toughest fucking years we've faced? These fucking bunch of fat fucking people fucking sitting around watching fucking Netflix and chill, and that's the toughest fucking 2 years. You got another thing coming, kid. Victory lap he did on his American Rescue Plan, blah, blah, blah. We've helped all this, we've done all this. You've done it with printed fucking money, and that's why we have inflation spiraling completely out of control. So you can talk about these little gains. Sure, if you print money and you build something nice, you'll have something nice. But at what cost? You're going to find out at what cost. And it's going to be fucking way more than you have the fucking ability to fucking pay. I would imagine. He says trickle-down economics doesn't work. Taxation is cruel and destructive and stupid. There's a better way to fund the things we want to fund, and that is voluntary contributions. Now, because our government has made so many bad decisions, and because our credit bubble's going to completely collapse, we no longer have the luxury of a small tax rate and a small government that we can support with that tax rate. Because we're going to need every economic opportunity we can have to try to avoid widespread famine and violence. And that means no fucking taxes. And don't worry about it. Because I wrote you a book that explains how we can take care of all that bullshit that you care about so fucking much without having to create a fucking violent hell for society to fucking live in. Let's see here. Then he does another victory lap on his infrastructure bill. Talks about more bullshit programs and projects. Then he says, well, we're going to buy American, because that's going to help American companies, right? Of course it is. It's going to help the American companies that fucking donate to his political campaign, and they will get whatever advantages they get in this entire fucking deal, and the politicians will be happy. The CEOs will be happy, and we're going to pay prices that are through the fucking roof to do a job the government shouldn't be involved with in the fucking first place. And I do talk about roads and the transportation system in my book, and I do talk about how we can transport ourselves without needing government's help. We will buy American. It looked like Pelosi got excited. That was the only moment of emotion she had the entire time when he said we'll buy American. I think she was just thinking about some of those contracts and some of those kickbacks that she might get as a result of that. Then he talked about new legislation. We need to stay competitive with China. It's like these 2 complete idiots competing over who can be the biggest idiot and who can have the biggest collapse when this global economy fucking fails. 2 centrally planned systems. But, China's centrally planned system is actually, I think, from what I've heard about it, smarter than America's centrally planned system. Because at least China has competition between the various I guess I'd call them oligarchs or whoever's in charge of the different provinces. And so there is more learning taking place, more experimentation, it's a more intelligent system than what we're doing here, which is just pure corruption. But both are going to fail, ultimately. Then he said his top priority is getting prices under control. So I guess this is where he talks about inflation. And he says, this means businesses have to lower their costs. That doesn't mean lowering their wages. Well, actually it does. Because wages is, for a lot of businesses, their biggest cost, especially in a service sector business. But any kind of production, you have wages, and that is one of your costs. So that's just a little note. He says, how do you do that? He says, by making more in America. It's like, how? I'm like, so you're going to buy from American producers who free market participants won't buy from because it's too expensive? So you're going to buy stuff that's even more expensive, and that's going to lower inflation? Then he says, my plan will ease long-term inflation. 17 Nobel laureates agree. It's like, well, of course they fucking agree, because if they disagree, they won't have that distinction anymore. That's how you get those distinctions, is by agreeing, by being a sheep, a conforming sheep, who never questions anything and just takes exactly what you're told as God's fucking truth. A lot of words will live in infamy. My top priority is getting prices under control. Just wait 6 months and check back and see how that's going. Wait a year and check back and see how that's going. Call me out if I'm wrong, but this inflation ain't getting no better, dude. Lower drug costs. Yeah. He criticizes the pharmaceutical companies like he hasn't been a complete fucking shill for them this entire fucking pandemic. Trying to push their products onto people, trying to use government coercion to force people to fucking get these products from these companies, and now he's going to criticize them and say they're charging too much for fucking drugs. He brings out some kid who needs insulin. You know what, Biden? I got a suggestion for you, dude. Why don't you just remove patent protection from all medication? Because I guarantee you do that overnight, every fucking medication available will be completely affordable and cheap for anyone who wants it. Why don't you do that if you actually care? Because you don't actually care. All you actually care about is making sure those companies are making enough money that they keep contributing to your fucking campaign. And I meant to look up how much they had contributed to his campaign, but I forgot to do that. You can look that up. It's a substantial number. Just talks about, oh, we're going to use tax credits, do this and that. It's all just central planning bullshit. Them basically trying to manipulate the economy and trying to get people to produce and consume things that they don't actually want to produce or fucking consume. But, you know, water always finds its fair level, and it's just a matter of time before the entire thing implodes. And I never have to listen to some moron like that talking about topics he doesn't have the first fucking clue about, to try to build some kind of bridge with a world that seemingly has absolutely no interest in anything I have to say. Despite the fact that for 4 fucking years, I've done nothing but fucking listen and try to understand the points and do things like this, where I listen to the other side, where I hear and where I fairly evaluate what they say. Everyone just wants to keep living in their fucking bubble. But your bubble's gonna fucking burst. And when it does, you'd better own fucking gold.